Today in episode 59 of the podcast, we will be reviewing Captain America Brave New World and the final episodes of Cobra Kai. We'll also be giving the rundown of the top stories of the week, including who may be our next Dumbledore. But I'm Brad, he's Josh, and this is We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we get into our news this week, as always, please go to YouTube and give us a like and subscription. Hit that notification bell so you get our episodes when they drop every single Monday. Also, if you're listening to us in the audio room, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. Also, go to willbringthepopcorn.com for all our archive episodes, as well as our merch store, all our social media info, and show different ways that you could continue to support the podcast. As always, we can't thank you enough for your continued support.
Yes, I want to start off the news this week in probably the oddest story that's come out. It could be fun, but it just sounds ridiculous that a new series is in the work at Amazon starring Taylor Lautner. He will also executive produce, but it's called Taylor Lautner Werewolf Hunter. So it's an alternate reality where he finished filming the Twilight films and disappeared from everywhere. Well, he ended up joining a secret society of werewolf hunters who need his expertise, and he joins up with them to hunt werewolves.
So he's really stretching his acting legs here to get this role of himself as a werewolf hunter, playing his most famous role, that he's had to this point. But it definitely seems like a fun premise. But I anytime you think of something hunter, my mind automatically goes back to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which was just a ton of fun and one of the most absurd films that I can recall seeing in recent years. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about this because obviously the Twilight films were extraordinarily popular, one of the best-selling, book series of all time as well, too. But, it could be a lot of fun. I have a feeling it's going to be very meta and very poking fun at itself.
Very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, very, wink and nod to all the, Twilight fans out there. But I'm interested to see what they come up with as far as, how they're going to present this and what it's going to look like and, just to see what all they come up with. I'm very curious.
Yeah, because it could be really just super crazy, over-the-top, insane, slapstick type of show. But, I mean, you could really tell from how they describe it that they are going pretty tongue-in-cheek and it's gonna be funny, but also let's see how serious they take it too. If they end up going, if it's almost like a mock documentary style, or if they keep it as kind of serious. It's just one of those that catch you off guard. Yeah, Taylor Lautner's going to star as himself as a werewolf hunter. Okay.
You know what? I kind of wish it would be almost like a TV version of Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with Nicolas Cage playing himself,
it's kind of another thing that popped in my head is do it in that style.
Yeah, do it in that style. I think could be a lot of fun too. But yeah, this is one that just kind of came out of left field. I'm like, okay, this is what he's been up to. This is what he's working on. So, it's going to be on Amazon. Amazon's got several hit shows on their hands, and they're known for taking good care of their projects. So I'm curious to see what they want to putting together what this is going to look like, but it just seems absurd on its premise. He's leaving the one thing he's known for to disappear from society. Kind of tongue in cheek of where did Taylor Lautner go after he made the Twilight movies? Well, I guess is the kind of way of poking fun at where he went, right? So,
yeah, because he basically did disappear. No one really saw much of him after, Twilight. Of course, he dated Taylor Swift during that time as well, and at Twilight, and he just had so much coming on him. He was looked at. Maybe he's the next big up-and-coming actor who's going to be maybe an action star or this or that, and just haven't seen him in really anything in years. I can't remember the last thing I saw him in outside of Twilight.
Yeah, it's just one of those, he's the one of the three that never really hugely took off after that, really, because, Robert Pattinson's obviously a big mega star, and so is Kristen Stewart in her own right. She's, gone on to do a lot of big things, but he was one that definitely seemed to, for one reason or another, never really land that next role that kind of catapulted him into another stratosphere of superstardom that, maybe this is a way of bringing him back around and having a little bit of a career resurgence for him. So who knows?
Because it could show different sides, show his comedic timing, show his action, that he could still do action or something, show maybe some horror aspects. He could end up using it as a pathway to more stuff. Hey, I can do horror, I can do action, I can do comedy, we mixed it all into this show because we don't really know what genre it's actually going to fall under. Could they do a little horror aspect of it? Could it be action-packed, or is it just all going to be like Curb Your Enthusiasm with the werewolves and Taylor Lautner?
It could be. It's a lot of fun. Definitely one that we have to keep an eye on for sure. But I do want to kind of pivot to our next story, and it's got a lot of people around the internet talking. We're very close to the start of filming for the new Harry Potter series that is going to be all over Max. It's one of their most ambitious projects and one of their most financially, like, they're putting the most money into, projects that they've ever done. And one of the most important roles in the Harry Potter series is, of course, Dumbledore. And now we have an actor who is in the late stages of supposedly signing on to play this role. And it's got the internet talking about the casting decision for one reason or another, and we could touch on that a little bit. And the actor is John Lithgow. Now, John Lithgow has been around for decades now. He's been, Third Rock from the Sun, Conclave, like a whole bunch of stuff. That's an incredibly talented actor, but it's got the internet talking for a wide variety of reasons, and none of them really have to do with the credentials of the actor himself.
Yeah, most of the discussion online right now is about his age. He is 79 years old. He's going to be turning 80 this year, so potentially he's going to be turning 80 when he's playing Dumbledore and in there. And that is a significant thing, but he is a fantastic actor. Like, he can do comedy really well. He can do drama a bit, and Dumbledore is a mixture of that. He has his lighthearted side, and he's got his more deeper, serious side, but he can mix it. And I think he would be fantastic for it, but it is something to think about. I don't think it should be that big of an issue, but it is, if you're looking at this potentially being a 10-year series, that he could be going into his 90s by the time it ends.
Yeah, and that's something that, we're not gonna try to make this like an age issue too much, but I mean, it is something that's a valid concern for a lot of people, especially with the actors that have already played the role of Dumbledore. Now, you have the original Dumbledore who was cast in the first two Harry Potter films, unfortunately passed before the third one. And then, Sir Michael Gambon comes in and finishes the series and, unfortunately passes a little bit of time after that gets done. So not to take like the morbid approach for it, but a lot of people are like, okay, you're already having the issues with Dumbledore having to have multiple people play him for the movie series. Now you're talking about another 10-year commitment for a TV show, and you're casting an actor who's already 80 years old by the time the filming starts. It's definitely a valid concern. And it's got, like I said, it's got nothing to do with his acting ability. As an actor, he is fantastic. Like, that is a very good get for this series to get, but it's got a lot of people talking for one reason or another about if he's going to be able to make it through filming 10 seasons of this. But like you said, is going to push him in 90. We don't have a lot of precedence for an actor taking a significantly long role for this amount of time into that late of the stage of their life. That's not to say there aren't people who are casting their roles in their 80s or even their 90s for like a one-off role that only takes a couple months to film. And this is a multi-year, potentially decade-plus
and a significant role.
Yeah, and it's a very significant role that's going to require, a lot of filming, a lot of press, a lot of,
some light action scenes for him.
Yeah, maybe. And there's ways they can get around that. They can
that.
get around the action part of it. I'm not that concerned with that. But it is a significant time commitment for an actor who is, not to be mean to say significantly past their, the prime of their life necessarily. But it's one that, like I said, if it was just on his acting ability alone, fantastic hire. You want a guy like that on your show. And he's going to do a fantastic job of Dumbledore. It's just what the internet is talking about currently. And it's a valid concern for a lot of people that there's just not really a whole lot of precedence for something like this.
Yes, you also got some still talking about the guys who are in the running for Hagrid. I'm still going to pull for Brett Goldstein to be Hagrid because I think it would be fantastic. If you haven't watched the latest season of Shrinking, it's a different side of him that you get to see in that. Right. And everything, but also being such a good writer and stuff too, he could help out in the writer's room and make sure the stories for Harry Potter end up, going well. But I would love to see John Lithgow do it. It's just there is that a lot of people are talking about, but you can't not think about. Yeah. He's entering it at 80. That he's going to be having a significant amount of time because, Dumbledore is significant to every book. I mean, he's featured heavily in every single book, little less in the last once you get to a certain point.
Sure.
But he's still very significant to the story and overall, so he's going to be having a lot to do for the next potential 10 seasons, but you don't know how long it's going to take to film all that because it's supposed to film this year for season 1, but we won't see it until 2027, but we don't know if they start filming the next season in 2026 because not only do you have his age, you have the kids' age. They're going to grow up quickly. If you're trying to get kids around the age that the kids actually are, you can't wait too long in between. See, you can't do a Game of Thrones of 3 or 4 years before you go to the next season, or with House of the Dragon and other stuff that had significant breaks in between. they've got to keep up this filming schedule, because not only your older actors are going to be getting closer to 90, you also have the kids. They're going to grow up quickly. So that's something that's going to be really difficult for them to balance. But if they think John's the guy to go to, I'm all on board for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to have him on board, to have him play Dumbledore. And I'm so looking forward to this. This show is just going to do such huge, huge numbers for Max. It's Harry Potter. You throw Harry Potter on anything, it's going to make a ton of money. It already does. Still one of the most culturally relevant and popular brands there is out there. Like, you see Harry Potter everywhere, and I'm excited to get that, project off the ground and see what it does. And if they get John Lithgow, if he's the one that ultimately decides to be Dumbledore, more power to him. I wish him nothing but the best, and I'm excited to see his take on it when he does decide to sign on and do that role for sure.
It just popped in my head. Did you see they asked Jason Isaac recently if he would have any interest in returning to the Harry Potter world in a different character and stuff? Of course, he was, Malfoy's dad, and he was a Death Eater, and he played a dark character and stuff. He's like, well, I'm hoping I get the role of Hermione.
That was hilarious.
It's like, he's so anybody who had anything to do with Harry Potter is being asked relentlessly about this, if they're coming back, if they're going to have a cameo, if they're going to do this or that. And that was just a great response from him. The guy hoped to be Hermione.
It's so funny. He's such a nice guy, and that's hilarious and a very on-brand answer for him.
So I want to go ahead and move into our next story, which is we did get another update on Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. Season 3 is officially a go, but we've learned that it's going to have a time jump. We're moving several years into the future from where we left everything, and we're in the middle of the war with Sauron, and he's going to be creating the One Ring. So we have jumped pretty significantly, and that's a pretty big jump. We were talking about it when we reviewed the last season and stuff. How many more seasons are they going to go of where they're going to stretch us out? And, are they going to give us the beginning of the war and going through? And where is the One Ring? Well, they answered it already. They're jumping far ahead to get us right into the One Ring. So potentially we've got 1 to 2 more seasons left of this if they're already getting to the creation of the One Ring.
Yeah, we wondered how long this was going to come, if they were even going to get a third season. It seemed like they were on board with it, but we got the confirmation out in an official post on social media, of all things, to kind of whet the appetites of everybody who loves Lord of the Rings like we do. And it was an exciting update, and it's good to see that they have a plan in place where they're going to jump into this show. And I kind of like the fact that they're jumping ahead a little bit into a full-on war. I think that's got a lot of exciting possibilities. One thing they are well known for is great action scenes, great war scenes, battle scenes, fight scenes. Those are things that they can do really, really well, and I think they could really take a big step forward into this project by jumping straight into the war and not kind of just leaning into the outskirts of a war and have 1 full season. It seems like we're going to get probably 2 full seasons of war and everything going on, and a way to wrap everything up to kind of lead into what we know from the Lord of the Rings films. And I, for one, could not be more excited to get that update that we got. It was a huge nugget of information that I'm excited for them to finally get this season put together. Because like I said, I really feel like by the end of that second season, they had really found their voice and were really moving forward in an exciting direction. And I'm excited to see them take the next step now.
Yes, it does have its problems and issues and make some changes and stuff. Of course, the opinion on it online is much more polarizing than that. But I am looking forward to see what they do. The second season was an improvement. It did have some faults, but I thought it did a good job. But I'm still curious, is it leading up to tie into the films, or are they going to be doing their own thing? Are we going to get a different look of the defeat of Sauron, or are they going to mix in footage from like the Fellowship of the Ring of him being defeated and everything like that? It's going to be really interesting to see how they either tie it in or they decide to not tie it into the films.
Yeah, we'll see what direction they decide to take with it. They seem to have, kind of mixed bag with the two of them, to kind of like take these characters you already know and kind of present them in a way that, some people like to complain that it's not direct source material, blah, blah, blah. It's whatever. This is somebody's interpretation of it. Just kind of take it for what it is and enjoy it. And you can find enjoyment or you cannot. But that's, the whole point of having an opinion on it, right, is to, kind of see these things. But I'm excited to see what they come up with. I really enjoyed the second season. I'm excited for this time jump. And give me that battle now. I want all of the fight scenes. I want all of the cool battle sequences, the, interpersonal conflicts. See them all come to a head like they're about to, and just really excited to see the next story that they give us.
Yeah, we haven't seen when exactly to expect the next season. They didn't go in that details, just giving us a time jump. But with how much money and time and effort goes into it, it's probably not going to be until 2027 as well. So we could potentially have season 3 of the Rings of Power along with the premiere of the Harry Potter series in the same year.
And you're talking about two incredible things to look forward to. I'm very excited about that. Another thing that I'm looking forward to, and it seems like we're finally getting it after 40 years from the original, one of the most popular movies as we were growing up, and excited to see that's finally getting a sequel, is we're getting a Goonies sequel. Now, it's going to have Steven Spielberg attached as executive producer. You're also going to have Christopher Columbus as well coming in.
Who wrote the original Goonies.
The original movie. You're also getting Lauren Donner producing the film as well. But after 40 long years, we're finally getting a follow-up to this Goonies movie that a lot of people, at least especially in the last 10 to 15 years, have really been pushing to see another one.
It's kind of crazy looking back just on Chris Columbus for a second of the films that he's had a hand in, because he was part of the Harry Potter world with Harry Potter films, Home Alone, iconic Goonies. Movies. Like there's some huge iconic movies he either wrote or directed that he's had a hand in, and having him and Steven Spielberg back for that is going to be significant. You wonder if Ke Huy Quan's popularity and his Oscar and stuff got the studio to be like, all right,
sure,
he's a guy who could really help with them. I mean, I don't think the movie would need that much help, but that's help that when you're looking at stuff, because there was a report about, well, now they're looking at your Instagram followers to see if you're worth casting in a movie or not. So, you know, what they're looking for, whatever way that they can get the cast and the characters, because, you know, Josh Brolin is still around, Sean Astin's still doing quite a bit. The others have, you know, not as involved with a lot of stuff. We've also had several that have passed who was in the film and stuff, but I'm looking forward to see what they do. You figure with 40 years passing since that film came out, that it's probably going to be something involving their kids, that they get to show up and they get to have something, and maybe it'll be eventually they can go on with their kids, but you know there's probably going to be them as the adults and their kids going off on another adventure trying to discover or find something. But I'm looking forward to it. If they do it right and they have, you know, Chris and Steven helping and behind it and stuff, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do for a Goonies sequel.
Yeah, capture that tone and that heart that movie really had, and it was so fun, so fun. I wonder if we're getting some Fratelli kids to kind of make an appearance in this too, and, you know, I'm so excited about the possibility of this. It's one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. I loved watching this. I still love to go back and watch it to this day. Just a ton of fun, and so cheesy and fun that it's got me very excited about the possibilities, especially when you put the original people involved with the movie are kind of back to help keep that tone and hopefully that charm and that heart in the next iteration of this film. I know we give a lot of crap to sequels on here, but this one, I think, if done right, could be really special, and I'm excited to see what they do.
It's hard with this one that's hit you right in the childhood, too. Like, you're going to be able to get most of the cast to come back together for this, and you've got Ke Huy Quan just got his hands and footprints in Man's Chinese Theater and stuff that he had most of the cast showed up for that, and, you know, Sean Astin and him reunited and Love Hurts and stuff, so it feels like there's still a big bond between all of them, so it's going to be fun to see them back together and have another Goonies adventure, and maybe we'll get our new Superman will make a cameo as our favorite Goonie dressed in a Superman suit. That would be fun.
I love it. It'd be so much fun to have that as well, but yeah, looking forward to that. It's just something that it's got a soft spot in my heart for it, just from the nostalgia alone, that I'm very excited about the possibility for that one.
So our next story, we got HBO giving us some updates on a few different series here. So starting with House of the Dragon Season 3, they've said it's going to kick off in a big way. We have the Battle of the Gullet, which is one of the bloodiest, gruesomest battles in Game of Thrones. So they're starting right off the bat that we're going to get this. The whole season could be war. That's what we kind of looked at the end of the last season. Like, we're building up to this battle and this war that we could just have an entire season of war.
Yeah, Westeros is completely up for grabs here, and it's been culminating in cooking with, especially the way that season 2 ended. You've got this battle between, you know, Rhaenyra and, you know, her side versus the other side. You know, are you team black or are you team green kind of thing, and it's really coming to a head now with this upcoming battle and war. I'm so excited to see them get into this, because at the end of the day, Game of Thrones has always been about great battle scenes, great fight scenes, drama, interpersonal conflict. And they do such a good job of that I'm excited that this is where they're picking up with it. Like, we're in full scale war here, and this is where I think shows like this really shine and thrive. So it's really cool that in 1 week we get updates on 2 potential huge like fantasy science fiction battles, with the talk of the Rings of Power getting into the Battle of Isengard, and now you're talking about the House of the Dragon Battle of the Gullet, which is, like you said, a very gory, bloody, violent war, one of the most violent battles that George R. R. Martin's written for his Game of Thrones series, that has a lot of people really excited about them finally bringing that to the screen.
Yeah, hopefully most of it takes place at night in the dark, and we get some really excellent episodes out of it, right?
Completely in the dark, right? And you can barely see it. It's only 30% visible, and I'm sure the internet will love that.
I mean, there could be some interesting scenes if you actually did it, of course, being tongue-in-cheek about the controversy over the dark battle scenes, but if you have like showing people on a ship and you get a flaming cannonball that's coming at the ship and the explosions and you get to light up the ships. There could be some good scenes, but we want to be able to see what's going on. So hopefully we get that. But they also gave us another update that they are working on yet another spinoff of Game of Thrones involving the House of Targaryen. So we don't really know anything more about it, but they said they're really excited about what they're doing with that, but we don't know exactly what time period they're going to go. Is this going to be after House of the Dragon? But that kind of gets too close to the regular Game of Thrones timeline, so I'm guessing this is going to be another prequel before House of the Dragon. But that's about all the details I gave on us, but the House of Targaryen is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, I'm a little mixed on that, because I don't want them to oversaturate Targaryen stories necessarily, when there's so many other families they could look into. You could get a Lannister backstory. You could get, like, there's so many other interesting families that I hope, for their sake, they don't oversaturate the Targaryens. Because at the end, the Targaryens are probably the most intriguing family in there, just because of the interpersonal dynamics. Not the family's not without their controversies, obviously.
Really interpersonal dynamics.
Very interpersonal, interfamilial dynamics there, if you know what I mean, if you've watched the shows. But it's one that I hope they don't overplay their hand on that one. Like I said, if the stories are entertaining, I'm always going to be fine with that, but I kind of want to see them explore more. It's kind of, you don't want it to become like almost like a Star Wars-esque thing where you get so many people are so over like the Skywalker stories.
This is episode 9 of the Targaryen saga.
Right, and I'm hoping it doesn't become that, if you know what I mean. But, if there's so many interesting stories they could tell in this world that they could get into. If they want to go another route, go to another time, place, I'm perfectly fine with that.
So HBO also gave us an update that The Last of Us, they're looking at 4 seasons for it. Yes. So, we know we've got 2 games right now. There's a potential 3rd in the works. So they're going to go either they're going beyond where the games are currently, or they're going to stretch out I couldn't see how they could stretch out part 2 to be 4 seasons, but they talk like they want to do 4 seasons of that show. So it's going to be really interesting if they're working with the studio to get like their ideas and see what they can go with. But it also causes a problem, like what happens if they go past the game and they don't like what, the gamers don't like what they did in the series, and then the game comes out having the same storyline. Is it going to affect it or not? It's going to be really interesting to see, as we've had with Game of Thrones, when it surpasses the source material, exactly how fans and everyone react to what they're doing.
That's the exact comment I was about ready to make about that, is like, you have a perfect example of something that exceeds your source material and you start taking your own creative liberties. It could either be a home run or it could be a huge swing and a miss. And hopefully, as it goes, we get more into the home run territory as opposed to the swing and the miss. But I'm excited. They did a really good job in season 1 of The Last of Us. Season 2 is getting ready to drop here very shortly, within the next couple months. And I'm excited for that to finally drop on HBO as well. But the fact that we're getting 2 more seasons after that, it's going to be real intriguing how far they go into the second game. Because the first season was pretty much the Cliff Notes version of the first game, taking some creative liberties, of course, with some things, but at the core of the story was pretty much the first game, and now they're talking like you're gonna make 3 seasons out of the second game without knowledge of what could even potentially be in the third game. Like, that's a little concerning, but at the same time, for now, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because of how good it's been so far, and I'm very curious to see if it gets through the 4th season, what that's going to look like, especially if you know what's coming and the gut punch we're going to get from the 2nd game into these seasons. We'll see how much of an appetite there is for the show after that.
Yeah, because if you are a gamer and you know part 2, that there's plenty of controversy around that game. Like, there's many that love it, but a lot that loathed it because of some of the things that happened. And there's quite a bit of some I could see, others it's just because everyone's angry about everything anymore and they're just going to be mad about everything. But we'll see how that ends up. Like, we know we at least have both games being covered here. I mean, there was some talks that part 2 of the game might go into 2 seasons, so it will be interesting to see what that 4th and potentially final season is going to be, if it is something that surpasses the games. Because if they give an ending to the show and then they keep the games going, like, it's because they're their own thing, but it's really hard for some people to be able to disconnect. Well, you've ruined the game series for me because you did this ending in the show. Like, they're 2 different properties, but some people just can't disconnect that.
Yeah, and that's a problem that a lot of people have with storytelling too. It's like, it's based on the game. It is not a verbatim beat by beat storytelling in video form of this video game that you've loved. And you can apply that logic to any book you ever read. You can apply that logic to literally anything else that gets adapted from something. It's based on the material. It's not the source material retelling. And I wish that so many people could just disconnect that part of their brain that is like, well, I don't like it because in the book they did this and this is how this story is supposed to go. Send your hate comments to me, please. Because
that goes back to Harry Potter
this
and Game of
annoys
Thrones
me
as well.
so much about so many different things because it's not a fully dedicated, beat by beat adaptation of a book that it's just automatic garbage. No, that's not the case. This is based on characters and based on a story, and they will take elements from that story and put it practically in a way that does it. It doesn't work all the time, obviously not. But like, I'm gonna go. Sorry to go on a bit of a tangent about this. Like, this is just, it really strikes a nerve with me when people do this. It's just like, take it for what it is and enjoy it for what it is, based on something you already know.
Yeah, like, I've just finished the Jurassic Park novel finally and the movie has been one of my favorite movies of all time. It's still one of my favorite movies of all time. It's vastly different than the book, but I still appreciate what they were able to do in that film, even though it varied greatly. They changed the characters, they changed the things to fit the world that they were trying to build, and it's worked out for them because now we have Jurassic World Rebirth, which is the 750th Jurassic Park movie. Yeah. Is about to come out, and it looks like it could still be fun, but they made changes to work in the universe they were wanting to create from it. Would I have liked to seen more of the scenes and stuff from the Jurassic World book? Yeah. A Jurassic Park book in there? Yeah. We're getting at least one of them in Rebirth, which is the T-Rex river scene and stuff, but it's an adaptation. It's never going to be true one-to-one. Harry Potter wasn't true one-by-one. You even had the author working with it on it. There's some things that work well in books that don't always translate well to live action and in a full story. It also, some stuff just will, even though you have forever to read and have this story play out in a book, well, you're trying to keep it to an hour-long episode or a 30-minute episode or a 2-hour movie. You have to condense and change some stuff to make it work in that format. And they're going to make some changes, but I'm fine to see what changes they're going to make.
Yeah, and it's just... It's so ridiculous, and I'm so tired of hearing that because it's not exactly what they did in the books and blah, 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 blah. They did this. It's not the freaking book. If you want the book, read the book. Stop coming for these movies and these projects that are being made that are based on it and not an adaptation. If they presented it as like, this is an adaptation of this book, and then they take liberties of it, okay.
And this is 1-to-1. We're doing it exactly like the book. We're going to do a
faithful adaptation of Harry Potter Book 1 that's going to be 18 hours long because it's the only way to practically make it work. Have at it. And then enjoy that if they decide to mess with anything there. But it's so basic. I get so worked up about this. And I really try not to, but it's just so frustrating to see people just automatically dump on something because it's not a direct, faithful adaptation of a book that they love so much. And it's just... just stop. Just enjoy these things for what they are. These people work really hard on these. If they want it making a bad movie, it's a bad movie. But don't call it a bad movie because it's not exactly the way it was written in a different medium.
One that's got some really weird energy around is the How to Train Your Dragon live action. because you do have the director of the animated films is doing it, and they've basically said it's been contradicted. Say we've made some significant changes. Others like we've barely made any changes to the script, and it's 1-to-1. But now they're complaining that, well, I mean, the animated movie is vastly different than the books, but now they're complaining that the live action movie is too much like the animated movie. Like, which way do you want it? Do you want it to be exactly like you want it, or do you want this changes? I can see if they were wanting the live action to be more like the books, which it's different. I've got my kids' books. We're working through them and stuff as well. But it's you cannot make people happy when it comes to adaptations. You've just got to try to go forward with the best game plan that you can come up with and go. And we also even have that polarizing with the Lord of the Rings. Like Peter Jackson's first 3 adapting the main Lord of the Rings book is beloved, but The Hobbit is not. And it's the same people who did it, but it's because of, studio and other changes and stretching a book out and including stuff that wasn't in the book. You've got such polar opposite opinions between Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films. Like it was almost like it was made by 2 different studios, by different directors, by different everything, with how much people hate the Hobbit and still love the Lord of the Rings. I still enjoy both. The Hobbit did have issues, but like you just can't make people happy.
Yeah, his quality of movies is one thing, but it's ways to see people just get so bent out of shape over this is like, it's crazy, and I'm guilty of it myself, but for the exact opposite reason. But just go touch some grass and go do something positive instead of just always complaining online about something. Like it's so exhausting. But I want to move now into a little bit more of a positive direction here. One of our favorite movies that you've heard us ad nauseum talk about on this show is Godzilla Minus One. And this week we got confirmation that Takashi Yamazaki is working now on the follow-up to Godzilla Minus One. They're in the storyboarding and writing process. I am so happy about that. We've gotten word that the budget has been increased for this movie. Hopefully not significant, because part of the charm that we loved about the original.
15.1 million.
Yeah, give it like 15 million and a penny. I don't care. But at the same time, like, don't $100 million this movie and, just completely blow the effects budget out of the water. Part of that charm was how significant it looked for the money that it cost to make. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited for this. This is a follow-up to a movie that you and I have both raved about a ton on this podcast, and they're finally following up on it, and I'm really, really excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, I loved it so much that I included the black and white version of it in the best of 2024, because it did come out in 2024, but I did it on a technicality because I loved it that much. Yeah. Like, it was so well done. Like, I agree. Like, I don't want to see it go from a 15 million or under, because they still won't give the exact number that they did, and go up to $150 million, because it's significant change. And we have, unfortunately, example of when you blow out a budget, does it mean it's going to be a good movie? No, with Joker Folie à Deux last year, that it quadrupled the budget that the first film had, and it's pretty much very little people enjoyed that film. You don't want to see it lose the heart and the charm and the direction, because you want to take a low budget independent movie and now make it a gigantic summer blockbuster. It can be a blockbuster still if you keep in that low budget, because it keeps, it keeps them grounded, that they're not going. I don't want to see it go in the wrong way. And I hope not. They've got the same people on board. They're working with the same stuff. They know the significance of doing another one is going to be. I just hope they don't go too overboard with the budget, because, I mean, if you get the special effects improved a little bit, but still it won an Oscar for its special effects. It had great set designs and stuff already. Give them like 30 million, double it to 30 million. That's not as significant as most blockbuster big films like that are 100, 150, 200, 300 million dollars.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what they come up with the follow-up, especially when they have the same people on board with writing the follow-up to it. They know they hit a home run there, and that's a formula that they probably don't want to change. I'm hoping they don't want to make too much of a change too, but yeah, give me another one of that. Give me the original next cut of this in black and white.
Yes, and please do a black and white version.
Flip it. Give us the black and white version first, and then give us
Absolutely.
the in-color version next, because I think that'll be a cool way to really reintroduce that movie, like in the follow-up, is give us the black and white version, and then we'll take the colored version after that and just see how different we feel about those movies compared to how we felt about Godzilla Minus One. And I'm just over the moon that they're doing a follow-up to this, and very excited to see what they do to follow up on something that we just both got so much enjoyment out of.
Yeah, I just absolutely love it. If you haven't seen it, I don't know how you haven't seen it yet. Go on Netflix and watch it. Either watch the dubbed or the subbed version, whichever that you prefer that you can watch. We enjoyed the subbed of seeing it in the full Japanese language and everything and stuff to it and the emotion, but it had heart, it had emotion, it had a little bit of horror. That's what I love most about the black and white version of the minus color version, was that it added a little more drama, a little bit more horror to Godzilla, but it added a little more weight to the emotion and stuff. And yeah, I agree 100%. Kick off with the black and white version, then give us the color version as a special release after that. That would be perfect.
Yeah, it sounds
of way of doing it, because that is my preferred version of it. Is the -1 black and white version, because it was just done so well.
Beautiful, stunning visual film that just really hit all the right spots for us and was a pleasant surprise. But I'm excited how they follow it up.
So I'm going to go ahead and take us into our movie review of the week, and this is potentially the first big blockbuster of the year in Captain America Brave New World. So this is Anthony Mackie's first film as Captain America. Of course, we got the Disney Plus series where we got to visit with him and Bucky a little bit more and just see exactly what happened after Endgame and him getting past the shield. And now we've got him established as Captain America, but he's not fully back to where like Steve Rogers and everything was. So we have Harrison Ford filling in to be Thaddeus Ross. Of course, we lost the original actor, so we got him back. And of course, there's a joke about him losing his mustache and everything else in there. But, you know, this is the first significant Marvel film as we move into the Fantastic Four and heading towards Doomsday and Secret Wars. And I'm a bit mixed on the film in two different ways, because on the surface level, I can look at this film and really enjoy it. It had great action set pieces. I think the acting between Harrison Ford and Anthony Mackie and everybody was really good, but it did have some underlying story problems if you really start getting down into the nitty-gritty of the story that it's telling. That's where it kind of falls apart a little bit. But I mean, if you just go on the surface with the action and the sequences and all that and the acting performances you get, it was solid, but it does have those issues underneath. And so I don't know if we want to go a bit spoilery with our talk here. I think we need to, because we have to talk about the good and the bad, and the bad's going to kind of give away some of those aspects.
Sure, and I'm interested to see your complete take on this, because this is probably the first Marvel movie that you and I haven't gone and seen together in quite a while. So it's been a little bit we can kind of, like, when we see a film together, we can kind of get a feel for how the other really feels about the movie, like almost immediately coming out of it, even though we don't really talk about it. You
can't see me face palming.
Yeah, until we really get into here and kind of see it. I got a lot of enjoyment out of this movie. I have my nitpicks about it that I'll get into when we start talking about like the plot of the film, and I think we can kind of just go ahead and dive into what this movie really is about. And at the end of the day, this is kind of, we have to go spoilers, so if you don't want to have the movie spoiled for you yet, go to our film wrap-up. We'll put the time codes in the YouTube video. You can check it out there and see how we feel in kind of our spoiler-free review that we do for our shorts and stuff that we post after the episodes comes out. But the plot of the film is basically, like you said, Cap is fully established as Cap now. He kind of begins going on this hunt for something that's been stolen, an important item that gets stolen, and you get this Cap in, now President Ross, who at the, the previous iterations of, Thunderbolt Ross has been more of a war general, kind of high-ranking military official that, is famous for enacting the Sokovia Accords, which is requiring mutant registration, led up to all the events of Civil War and things like that. So Sam's never been on Ross's good side, really. They've kind of been on the opposite sides of this, because obviously Cap, when he was Falcon, sided with Captain America and Steve Rogers in this whole, Sokovia Accords scene. So there's already some underlying tension in that, but you get them trying to come together now to stop this, potential what appears to be a terrorist attack on the president. And it tries a lot to be like Winter Soldier-esque in the political drama of it, that I feel like they don't do as effectively as they did in Winter Soldier. But that's not to say there aren't good bits of action in this when there were action. I feel like this film was lacking on action in a decent amount of it. And it's not without its issues, but at the same time, I still like really enjoyed like the message behind it. Sam really struggling with being Captain America now and dealing with the comparisons to Steve Rogers and what he's trying to do for people as Captain America and kind of the weight that has on him, especially the whole, all these other people have either taken super soldier serum or have these special enhanced abilities that I don't really have. And how can I, the real internal struggle that he goes with as not being a super-powered individual and still being tasked with being the hero that, the country and the world needs him to be as Captain America.
Yeah, and I think Anthony Mackie was fantastic. Like, he really commanded the screen as Sam, being Captain America, of taking charge of things. But, yeah, where the nitpicky stuff starts with me is that it feels like it's a sequel to so many things that it's almost lost in itself of exactly what it's supposed to be. Because
lacking an identity.
It continues on Falcon and Winter Soldier. You're getting continuation to that series, but you're also getting continuation to the Eternals, which was, back in, what was that, 2021, so about 4 years from the Eternals. But the biggest thing overall that it felt like, it felt more like a sequel to the Incredible Hulk back 17 years ago, that you had Edward Norton as,
sure,
Bruce Banner back then, because if that is officially part of the MCU, even though we changed to Mark Ruffalo and stuff, that is officially part of the MCU, and it felt like a sequel to that, but at 17 years later, and it did feel like it was more a Hulk movie than it was a Captain America in a way, because I would almost say Thunderbolt Ross was the main character more than Captain America. He was moving from set piece to set piece, because he was just, all right, there's something going over here. All right, I'm going to go do it. All right, there's something going on over here. I'm going to go do it. And he just bounced around a lot, all being driven by, Ross, and everything in this film revolved around him. Not only his issues with Captain America and he's wanting to restart the Avengers and bring, Sam back on to be his Captain America in part of the military and stuff. But also there's a lot of mystery and a lot of deception and stuff behind him. So like, it was a movie about Thunderbolt Ross with Captain America is what it kind of felt. That's where it says it feels like it's lacking identity, because it is a Captain America movie and it's featured Captain America well, but it felt like an Incredible Hulk sequel.
Yeah, and that's the issue that I have with it, is the lack of identity, because it does pull from so many different things. And this is kind of where I feel like we're talking a little bit out of both sides of our mouth when we talk about how we want these stories to be interconnected with everything we've seen. This is really the first callback to Incredible Hulk that we've gotten since the Incredible Hulk came out. It's the first callback where you talk about, the Abomination is mentioned in the beginning, who was the bad guy in the Incredible Hulk film.
And of course, got Abomination and She-Hulk and showed up in Shang-Chi, but that was about the only real connection we've had since then.
Right, and this is more of a direct callback to the events from the Incredible Hulk, though, dealing more with gamma radiation, dealing more with, Thunderbolt Ross's relationship with his daughter Betty, who was dating, Bruce Banner in that film. Like, like some of those real callbacks, and you get kind of the fallout from that, while also trying to tie in all of these other MCU projects. Like you said, we get our first call back to the Eternals, talking about Celestial Island and, all the stuff that it feels like they just tried to throw into a melting pot to get it to work and see if they could make a story. And I think they did okay with it, but it's not without its issues, right? So like I said, a little bit lack of direction here in some cases, where it was just like, let's try to throw it all together and make it work. So you get a lot of the mystery and intrigue, where it feels like who's really betraying the president in here, who is the president protecting, who is he doing like that. And it kind of leads to our villain, who I feel like was interesting, but a little lackluster. And the villain in the film is Samuel Stearns, who, if you know anything about the comics, he is known as the leader. He's this incredibly super intelligent scientist, has some experiments go wrong and lead him to, have this greenish appearance, dealing a lot with gamma energy. And they do a lot of really cool things with him, where he's like, has the ability to really mind control people and do some things like that I think were interesting. And I like the outline of it. I don't think the execution was as efficient as it needed to be, but him as the villain in this, and he was kind of the villain, kind of not, because in a lot of ways the president was a villain in this too. Like, he wasn't.
Ross was kind of the main and villain, and also the main subject, the main hero,
Right.
kind of like not exactly a hero,
Yeah.
but he's your main star for both sides.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like a lot of it got a little bit lost in the sauce for me, and it was a little bit messy. But at the end of the day, like, you get Cap's story of him coming to terms with the kind of hero that he wants to try to be his own version of Captain America. I think I think they do a good job of that, of telling Sam's story where he's, accepting that. You get these sporadic cameos, like you get a Bucky appearance, you get, a couple other people showing up and being involved in this, but you get really Sam getting that confidence he needs to move forward as the hero he wants to be, and he knows how he wants to be that and what he wants to do to really fully embrace being Captain America now. And he's not just Falcon, like he's really honoring Steve's legacy by becoming the best version of himself that he can be. And I think they told that effectively. It's just a lot of these other intermixing parts that they try to mix in with this story. It wasn't done as effectively as I think it could have been. Now, that's not to say that when they did get to the action in this is really good.
Yep.
When they get to it, Falcon, when you get to the end of Captain America and the Winter Soldier, it's no secret. The Wakandans gift him the suit that he's wearing with the vibranium wings and things like that are really awesome when he gets to really be in his element and use them properly. Really cool, really well done when, Thaddeus Ross becomes Red Hulk and you have that big final fight between Red Hulk and Captain. It was really well done. It was a short fight, but it was really cool, really visually well done. And I think when it got to that, they did a really good job of it. It's just getting this mixture of a story together is where it got a little bit messy for me. But it feels like a good movie, but not a great movie, but not a terrible movie either, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's kind of mid is where I'm winding up with it, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
It was right on the cusp of being something really good, but it just, because I want to touch a little bit more on the mix-ins and the stuff with that, because as we talked about, the leader was Mr. Blue, who came from the Incredible Hulk movie, so we got that more of that tie-in, but he wasn't exactly the leader that we know from the comic books. He's supposed to be this insanely genius guy, but his plan, because his whole motivation was basically about showing Ross as a villain to everybody. But it just didn't feel like his intellect and the things he was doing made the most sense of how he could. If he was that smart, he would have been doing stuff a lot better, because there's even towards the end, again, we're going heavy spoilers, a lot of stuff. He ends up deciding that he's going to turn himself in because that's the only way he can see to be able to get his plan to go. But turning himself in had nothing to do with the end plan. Like there was audio that got played over the White House speakers and stuff, and that kicked everything off. How did he play that from prison? Could he have not played that not from prison? Like, that really made no sense of where they led. Like, I think it was well acted, but the intelligence that we were supposed to see of the leader and his whole plan was just, what? Okay, it was really weak. And then, they added kind of Giancarlo Esposito in kind of late to the movie. We know that the movie was filming for a while, then we got the announcement that he was there. We know that who knows how many reshoots we got now, because they're like, well, they did 3 reshoots. Oh, we only did 1 regular reshoot. There's arguments all over. It was clear there was a lot of reshoots, because we know, like, with Seth Rollins, he was supposed to be in it as part of that Serpent Society and everything, that he was supposed to have a role in there for a little bit, but we kind of got cut down to Giancarlo's Sidewinder was kind of, did we even need him in the movie? Like, It played a part of the item that they were going to, but they could have really thrown that to any no-name actor to kind of take on that part, because it didn't really have a huge significance to the film at all, and he didn't really get a whole lot to do with it, so that was kind of a miss as well. And then, as you talked about the leader being able to have mind control, you're kind of going back to the Winter Soldier movie and, the triggers that the Winter Soldier have, but now you've made it where, well, he can do it to anybody playing a song and some other stuff to it, so that felt really weak too, that, well, you could just, they started off, oh, he's triggering a Winter Soldier, the guy who's gone through everything there, or a Captain America, not a Winter Soldier, a guy who's gone through all the experiments and the torture stuff that continues on from, the series and stuff, but it just felt so weak because it ended up turning into every single person regular Joe was being controlled as well, and it kind of lost some of its significance of what they were doing there. It was a lot of that stuff that just kind of, like I said, if I looked at it as surface level based on action and the acting and stuff, it was a solid film. But when I really start diving into what were they trying to accomplish with this film, what were they setting up, because we've talked around it, but we haven't talked about what that item is that this whole movie is based around. And it has a significance for the future.
Correct.
But how much significance, it didn't really have that much of the movie other than to set up the Eternals part and setting up for the future.
Yeah, so there's a scene here where a lot of the world's leaders that are going to be a part of the supposed treaty of how to use this material are coming together to create like a treaty to use this material responsibly, and it's supposedly stronger than vibranium. And if you know anything about the lore in the Marvel Universe, the one overarching material that's stronger than anything else, even vibranium, Wolverine's made out of it. It's literally adamantium. So we get our first adamantium reference in the MCU. And you know adamantium's very heavily involved with things like the X-Men and things like that moving forward. So we found this mineral at Celestial Island, so that gets the adamantium tie-in and how it makes its way here. And it's supposedly on this island in abundance. And, you know, there's a little bit of a international, you know, plot to kind of seize this island. Who's going to get control of it? Who's going to get to use it? Who's going to get to mine it? Who's going to get to use it for those? And, you know, you see President Ross, who is, his entire story is based around he needed to be in control of everything. And, you know, there's some of that stuff plotted in, but it really does feel like this movie is being used to kind of as a segue between what we have seen and what's coming. So this almost feels a lot like a bridge movie, in my opinion, is what I think they were trying to get to in this, because you get the introduction of adamantium, which is a huge part of what's coming forward, like we know. But now it's leading into, like you said, President Ross is wanting to rebuild the Avengers. He's wanting to get the Avengers Initiative restarted, which, as we know, if you pay attention to the MCU, what are two of the next big films that are coming up? They're both Avengers films. So this very much puts Captain America at the forefront as the leader of this next group of Avengers that's going to come through, like Steve Rogers was. It's going to be Cap in this instance. And who's going to ultimately fill out that team? Well, we know that we've got some heroes that are coming. We've got some heroes that are around still in the fold. He's made very clear mention that, you know, not everybody's going to want to be on board on this, so he's going to have to get a little creative. But we do get a little bit of foreshadowing from the leader in a very interesting back and forth that they have there, where he's like, hey, I've seen this coming. It's going to kind of be an end of the world, obviously leading into what we know is going to be Avengers Doomsday and what's going to kick off that and where we get there, obviously between the next two films that we've got coming out, which are, you know, Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four. That's going to kick off this real doomsday scenario that, you know, the Avengers are going to have to come together to deal with. And it's going to be interesting to see who they have make up this group of Avengers that's going to be taking on, who Cap winds up recruiting, because you got to figure it's going to be Bucky involved. It's going to be some of these other characters that we know are still kind of tangentially around. Hopefully we get a Shang-Chi appearance. Hopefully we get, like, who all is going to be a part of this new group of Avengers. We don't know yet. And that's going to be kind of the fun to see how that all comes together. But this very much felt like a bridge between what we've seen versus what's coming, because of the allusions they make to Doomsday and reforming the Avengers. And it's kind of pushing that along finally. It's getting the audience to kind of think about what's coming up and how we're going to get there. So, and I think in that way it did it a little bit effectively, but it's unfortunate that the fourth Captain movie that is kind of a nice story about Sam is still kind of being used as a bridge to get to the next big Avengers film.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the more my problems set, that, you know, this could have been a really big, good film for Anthony Mackie and for his Captain America, and you got some depth and levels to it, but it did feel more like, all right, we got to bring in the Winter Soldier, we've got to bring in the Incredible Hulk, we got to bring the Eternals, we have to set up the X-Men, we have to bridge a little gap to the Fantastic Four and Doomsday. Like, there was so much stuff that they were trying to cram in, and they didn't do most of it very well. Like you talked about, it was the extra credit scene where we're talking to the leader and stuff, and he's giving that, well, something is coming. That felt a little like he did not go into much, well, the others are coming. Like, okay, well, that could be about the Fantastic Four. Is that about the Thunderbolts? Because that's coming up soon. Is that, it was so vague that it just felt like, was that scene really even needed? And then it did look like they kind of threw it together quickly. Anthony Mackie was clearly standing in front of a green screen or a blue screen when he was doing his stuff. So like they cut his stuff in with the leader stuff, and it just did not look very well. So that whole, normally the extra credit scenes do have a significant setup for something that's coming up, and this one was just so vague on exactly what they're alluding to. Like, is it, you would think maybe it's alluding to the Fantastic Four, but you do have Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four coming out before we have Doomsday and everything else, and it just, that's where it kind of fell apart a little bit for me. Like, I enjoyed the movie, but when you really start going into the details of an interconnected MCU Marvel movie, it kind of fails Captain America a little bit because it wasn't fully about Sam's adventure being Captain America. There's so much other stuff going on, and it focused on Ross most of the time as the lead guy, but also kind of as a lead villain because he's been hiding stuff from the world, and it kind of blows up in his face. And, you know, a lot of political commentary, whether it's on the current political climate or they're doing their own thing, but you also, there's just so much back and forth. But it does feel like there's bits and pieces of a bunch of different stories kind of combined. And I was curious if you had the same feeling that I did with Danny Ramirez Falcon. Like, Taurus was a pretty decent Falcon. He was more kind of comedic, over the top, a young guy who's just not going to listen, and he's ready to get out there. His Falcon suit, while it looked decent, all I could see was Boba Fett mixed with Doom Guy. Like, I saw the suits, like, I just couldn't cut. Like, his suit didn't look bad, but I was just, well, that looks like it's all Boba Fett's colors. It's Doom Guy's colors. It's a little bit of Master Chief's colors together. Like, he went before, because, I mean, Falcon before was more like Captain America. He was blue, so now they're making them look different, but I don't know, it just stood out to me in the wrong way. Like, all right, he looks like Boba Fett.
But I have a feeling an upgrade's coming for him, because if you get to the end of the fade, I did feel a little bit similarly to what you said in seeing those elements, but you get the illusions of, hey, like, I'm ready, like, I know what I need to do now to kind of get back in the fold, because he unfortunately has an unfortunate situation happen to him, trying to save, World War III from breaking out. Is one of the main conflicts that he and Cap, and just some incredible flying fight scenes that they get in that are really, really well done. Obviously, his suit takes damage. He takes personal damage as well, winds up in the hospital, and nearly dies in the process. But him in his tongue-in-cheek kind of way, like, as, the Falcon to Captain America playing that role, he alludes to, hey, can you call your Wakanda buddies? And one of the funny lenses, did you just ask me to call my Wakanda buddies for a hookup, just to get an upgraded suit out of it? I have a feeling he's going to get that upgraded suit for the Avengers film when you see him again next. So I think he's going to look a lot sleeker and a lot more cool when you get the next iteration of Falcon that we see whenever he makes another appearance in the MCU. But that was kind of a fun moment between them, just like him learning, because one of the cool things, and I wish they would have dove into that relationship a little bit more between the two of them, because they do have kind of really a warm-hearted, like, heart-to-heart talk where, Cap's like, Anthony Mackie's like, I want to be like, Cap was something that people aspired to be. And a really cool, like, counter to that was Falcon telling him, like, hey, Cap was something that not all of us could be. Like, we're not all super soldiers and all the things. Like, he's somebody we looked up to. You, Sam, being the human Captain America, are something we can all aspire to be. I think that gave him some of that really cool inspiration. And it was a really good way of, kind of tying that interpersonal relationship together for the two of them and kind of bonding them in that way and kind of making it click into Sam's head. Like, this is the Captain I can be, is somebody that people can aspire to be, not just look up to. Like, if I can do it, you can find that strength within you to do something like this too, and kind of like be that kind of hero, as opposed to some unattainable super soldier, like, incredible example for people that, like, nobody can really reach because they can't take the serum. But, like, as that version of Captain America, that's the one that he wants to be, and it finally helps kind of collect things in a place for him. I thought was really, really well done in this story. One of the things that they really got right, and I wish they would have dove into that relationship a little bit more, because there was a lot of really solid things done between the two of them, and what little of it we got to see.
Yeah, because some of the way that Falcon went down in the film, it was very reminiscent of Rhodey and War Machine, of how he went down. So it was kind of, I don't know if it was on purpose or just they reused something. Like, it's supposed to be a little similar, but it was also in a bad way similar. Well, you've had two heroes go down in almost a very similar way. Of course, Vision took out, War Machine, and this was a missile and everything else, that he was being a little too cocky and arrogant, but War Machine was also being a little cocky and arrogant with what he was doing as well. But there was parallels, but I don't know if it was a good thing, because again, this was like, just felt like such a melting pot of, it's supposed to be interconnected to the MCU, but they're just throwing in so many different ideas that they've already used before. And then my last little nitpicky was Red Hulk. I will say it looked fantastic. Like, that might be the best that a Hulk has looked in a film so far, but if you know a little bit more about the Red Hulk, he's a little bit more in control of it, and this was basically Green Hulk red. Like, he was completely out of control. He had all the same movesets and stuff, and they're supposed to be similar, but there's something that's supposed to be able to set them apart, and there wasn't a whole lot. They both have women, and that's what, between Betty and, when we had Black Widow, those are the ones in the MCU that have calmed the Hulks down. So we've got, that parallel and stuff, but it's also a little, and I've seen it on the internet as well. I'm going to point out that, why did Harrison Ford, as a solid white-haired gentleman, end up as a dark, almost Reed Richards looking hair for the Hulk and stuff? So it just felt like that was a little off, that the Red Hulk could have been something a little different and more significant than it was, because it's supposed to be a little different than the our regular Bruce Banner Green Hulk, but in the end it ended up being just kind of Green Hulk but red.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because he is a lot more in control and more cognizant of his thoughts and abilities when he turns into the Red Hulk. And that's how he's always been portrayed in comics and other, media that have used Red Hulk before. So I get the complaints of that, and I had kind of a similar complaint too. I was like, really, do we really need another mindless Hulk running around? Kind of like when we've already done that. Like, I get it. Like, Banner had his evolution into Smart Hulk, which, take it or leave it, the internet loves to go back and forth about that. It's like they do everything else. But I was a little disappointed in the mindless Red Hulk too. But I feel like he got grounded a lot quicker. Like, when he was able to be a little bit more reasoned with than the Green Hulk was. So that there's there's some of that to be said, that it was slightly easier to get him to snap out of it than it would have been for the original Green Hulk. But I agree. I wish they'd have presented him a little bit different too, because it did very much feel like the exact same copy.
Like, it was a fun sequence. Like, it was a great action sequence. It looked great. Awesome. Hulk looked great. The detail in him, especially on close-ups, like, you're seeing all the hair and you're seeing all the details and stuff. It looked great. It was just, again, with the Winter Soldier mind control and with how War Machine went down, we've got kind of a similar sequence that we've already kind of seen with the Hulk. So there's a lot of stuff, like, we've already seen a lot of what they did in this movie. They're just doing it a little bit differently. Yeah, and I want to kind of get back to that fight that they had, because it is, in my opinion, the highlight of the movie, this fight that they have. It's not a very long one, but they do a lot of damage really quickly. But one of my favorite things that they did with Cap in this particular fight that doesn't really happen in too many other fights, you see Cap, you can see that he cares about Ross and he kind of understands what he's going through. He's not really on the offensive against the Hulk. He's more on the defense and protect. That you don't really see a lot in these fights. And I thought it was a really smart, subtle tweak to how they present these battles before, where Cap's very cognizant about protecting people and, things like, especially Sam. Sam's more of a protector than a real defender than anything. And he played a lot of defense in that battle. It's kind of hard to really attack the Hulk anyway, but I think they did a really smart job of portraying that fight as more of a defensive counter kind of stick and move kind of fight, as opposed to like a full on, we just got to go straight at him and hope you don't run into a buzzsaw kind of thing, where he would have get taken down. And that just shows like the
the battle intelligence that this captain has. Not to say that Steve didn't, but if you notice how Steve went at fights, he always went straight ahead.
He was just a hammer.
Like just ready to run through people, which was great. But I love that subtle difference in fight styles between the two of them, that he's not afraid to put you down if he needs to, because we saw some of that as well.
There's a lot more military strategy and a lot more thinking through the scenarios and the significance of not only to himself, the person he's fighting, the surrounding areas, and the people with him. It's much more military centered.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart way to kind of differentiate between the two of them, that he's coming into his own as his own hero, taking the Cap mantle, but he's not trying to fight like Steve did. He's not trying to move like Steve did. And he has his own way of doing things. And I think that was very effective in, that portrayal of Cap and Sam, that, he's a lot more, like you said, strategic in thinking. He won't hesitate to put somebody down because he's a very skilled hand-to-hand fighter that is really, really good. But you see some of that human element played into where, Cap could get stuck with something and just keep going because, he's superhuman. But you get... a little bit of a wounded Sam in a fight, and you see like that level that he goes to win a fight, but you see him very much affected by the things that happen to him in those fights. So I do think they do a good job of playing that strategic human, like normal human, not superpowered version of this character that I think they did a really good job of portraying that in this movie.
Yeah, I do feel this is probably another movie where the trailers really shouldn't have shown Red Hulk. I know why they did it, because they needed to show something significant and big and to get people excited, but a lot of the movie has a mystery build up of that something's going on with Ross and you don't know what it is, and then you get the big revelation that he's been taking gamma radiation and you get to see him change and everything happens. Like, that's a significant mystery in the film, but it is not a mystery because every trailer, every poster has shown you that he turns into Red Hulk. So there was no mystery behind it, because, again, I get why they did it, but it also, I think, significantly hurt it, because it would have been better if it was a mystery that, oh, here he comes, and you don't know that it's going to happen. But again, it's more nitpicking stuff, but there's just so much of that stuff that it's hard to not nitpick. And we didn't even talk about the inclusion of a character that basically was just there to fill in as another Black Widow, because Ross has a right-hand woman who is there for everything that he does, who was part of the Red Room. She's basically a Black Widow, but not a Black Widow. But that was the only point and purpose she had in the movie, was basically to be a more serious widow that kind of gets in Sam's way a little bit, but then, of course, in the end turns to help him. But, like, she really had no significance to the movie other than to give us a female being a Black Widow, beating people up and showing that she can hold her own. She didn't have like a full significance to me other than just kind of just showing, well, we need a Black Widow. We need a strong woman kind of in the film. Let's just kind of throw one in.
Yeah, it did feel kind of thrown in there. And some of the stuff when she got to highlight, it was nice. But I think at the end, it didn't add a ton to the film, which is unfortunate. But it was just like, oh, it's cool. Oh, this is her background. She had experience in the Red Room, so she's a widow. Okay, don't take her on one-on-one kind of thing. Like it was, I think it was okay the way they presented her in that way, but it didn't add as much as I hoped it would in the film. I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, so in the end, Captain America Brave New World was a fun Marvel action film that was just hindered and bogged down by a feeling of a pieced together story, that we had so many different elements from many different parts of the MCU that it didn't feel like it had a solid direction, and in ways it felt more of a sequel to another film than it did to continuing on the Captain America story. So the acting was good. Anthony Mackie was great as Sam. Like, he got to do a little bit more as him, but he was kind of hindered back because Harrison Ford, who did a great performance, was kind of the main character throughout this movie. In the end, because of those issues and just kind of the direction being a little wishy-washy on where exactly this story needed to be or wanted to be, I'm probably going to give it about a 6.5. It's kind of right in the middle to me. Like, it's not a bad film if I looked at a surface level of the action and the acting and stuff, as I mentioned before, that it's a solid film to watch. But when you really start looking at how the story is told and the pieces from the MCU that it's bringing together, it really fails on bringing a fully cognitive, cohesive story together to give us something that was this really needed in between where we left off to where we're going forward with Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four and Doomsday and on?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think with this movie you get really good action sequences when they get them. It's not as action heavy as I think a lot of people were hoping to be. It felt like a very thrown together plot of, had it been focused more on Sam's journey to becoming the Cap that he wanted to be and not as Thunderbolt Ross heavy as it wound up being, I would probably score it a little bit of a higher one. I feel like this is Winter Soldier light in its tone, and they try to make it a little bit political, but it doesn't really use that as effectively as like a Winter Soldier did. Mm-hmm. And for that reasons, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. I wanted to score it a little bit higher, but like the action helps really raise this movie up. This movie really does feel like a gap bridge between what had come before it and what's getting ready to come. For that, I think they did an okay job of kind of setting the tempo for where we're going moving forward with the next Avengers films and potentially Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four that are coming out this year. So that's why I give it a 6, but I could see myself giving it a little bit of a higher with another watch potentially, maybe going in and seeing if I could bump it up a half or a whole grade again, just based on, talking through this movie, kind of getting a little bit of a perspective from your end on it. I think I could be a little more forgiving in some of my grading of it, but in a lot of ways it felt like kind of just a thrown together plot that did some things effectively but kind of missed the mark on others for me.
Yeah, so if I could kind of turn my brain off to the knowledge of the comics and the MCU as a whole, I could enjoy it as a fun action movie. Sure. That it had good acting, had good action, but it's when all right, well, this is part of the MCU. We've had 35 projects or something in the MCU so far, and they're touching on like 10 of them in this movie and bringing stuff going forward. It was like, okay, it's just kind of pieced together a little too much. And I said it was kind of clear that the reshoots did change a significant amount of the movie, and I would be interested to see what it was going to look like before they did those reshoots and addition stuff. But Captain America Brave New World is in theaters now. If you go check it out, please come to our YouTube comments, come to our socials, our Discord, let us know what you think. We'd love to discuss it with you and see if you had the same thoughts on it now. We feel it's going to be a very polarizing type of movie that some are going to really love it, some are going to be in between, and others really loathe it because it could be any at any time just because of how it handled its story.
For sure. And it's one that it doesn't feel like it's going to have huge repercussions throughout the rest of the MCU, but I think it kind of sets up Cap leading this next group of Avengers into the next Avengers films, which is more than fine, and we'll see where they go moving forward to get to those stories and see, how this next iteration of the Avengers looks. I'm excited for that. Those are always going to make a ton of money, and I'm excited for that for sure. But now I want to move into our TV review of the week. We finally got the last 5 episodes of Season 6 of Cobra Kai. This is the culmination of a story over 7+ years now in the making, and this incredible run in the telling of Johnny Lawrence's story as the leader of Cobra Kai, reviving Cobra Kai, incorporating all of these wonderful elements of the Karate Kid films, and just telling this really cool original story of kind of Johnny's redemption. And we get the culmination of that now. Where we left off in the last season, we had the unfortunate death of Quan at the end of the Saikai Taikai, like before the finals can even happen. There's this huge brawl that breaks out, unfortunately ends with the death of Quan, who is kind of the star male student of the Cobra Kai dojo, led by Kreese, led by, the Korean element and the Korean faction there. And you get where it really picks up now is from the fallout of that. Are they going to continue the tournament? They've sent everybody home. Everybody's kind of dealing with the things that happened without really dealing with it. And now there's start of a push to get some finality to this Saikai Taikai tournament. And that's kind of the setup for these last remaining episodes of Season 6 in this story that's been just, in my opinion, one of the most pleasant surprises I've had out of a TV show in so long. If you had come to me 7 years ago and said, hey, we're going to have a sequel series about Karate Kid, but it's going to be from the perspective of Johnny Lawrence, and we're going to call it Cobra Kai, how would you feel about that? I'd have had some really mixed emotions about it, and kind of would have rolled my eyes like you did there, like thinking about it. And would have been like, I don't know, like this sounds kind of cheesy. I don't know if it would work. But here we are 6 seasons later, and I'm so happy and sad that this series is wrapped up. One, happy with how they wrap it up, but also sad that it's over, because this has been like one of the series that I was just chomping at the bit to come out every time they dropped episodes, and we finally get the finale of it.
Yeah, it's had such an incredible journey because it started on YouTube Red, and of course you're revisiting Karate Kid, you're going and telling the story of Johnny and Cobra Kai, but you're doing it on YouTube Red. You may not have had a lot of, it's on YouTube's service that not a lot of people know about or use, and then it did extremely better than anybody ever thought it was going to be, and moved over to YouTube for its final, few seasons and stuff. But I really love this series. It's corny, it's over the top, it's goofy, it's silly, but it's got a lot of heart, and it hits things from a lot of different angles. It's got some misses and things it has done wrong, but overall, it's just been such an enjoyable ride. And, I was a little critical when we did go over the last 2 parts. This is the 3rd part of the final season, that it did go into the more the kids are over in another country, they're going to go get drunk, and they're going to do this typical teen stuff. And it was like, well, you could have done things a little more. So we've been on such a journey with these kids. You could have had them be a little bit more than typical teens. But I will say these final 5, this last part, is the definition of sticking the landing. Like, they just fully nailed every aspect of these final 5, because it was just, you got heart and emotion. You've got so many story points wrapped up. You've got the feel-good stuff that you wanted to see. Like, we got what we want to see. We still got a little drama and intrigue. We got just some fun and some humor, but it nailed everything so well. Like, especially when you get stuff with like Kreese. Kreese finally realizes that a lot of the stuff that he has been doing is wrong. That he realizes he's a villain, and he knows he can't change from the villain, but he can try to be a little bit better than he has been. And there is so much significant stuff with Kreese that we got to see. I loved every scene with him, because from, going from the Korean dojo and stuff there to going back to the valley and being with everybody and talking to different people, especially there's one scene that still sticks in my mind heavily. And we're going to talk a little spoilers about, the final, because this is the end. This is the final part of it. So we're going to talk spoilers. Just like with Captain America Brave New World, if you don't want the spoilers, head over to our wrap up in the description of the episode, and you'll get our spoiler-free look at it. But there's a lot of significant stuff that happened here that we're going to talk about. And what I was starting to talk about was, Kreese and Johnny have a few different moments. And of course, the first time is, Johnny just responds with anger and stuff. And then that second time we get, at the tournament, Johnny comes up to Kreese, and we get him emotional and crying and belting everything out. And that was such a brilliant, beautiful scene that we got from 40 years of different stuff that we've seen that his character has gone through. And we've got all that pent up rage and emotion, and it was done so well of them to, especially because, that's the biggest connection and emotion was going to be between those two, and they handled it so well.
Yeah, I legit teared up watching it, because it was done so beautifully and moved me in such a way. Like, at the end of the day, like, you get a lot of integration in the Russos, and, Daniel's story as well. Some of the things we learn about Miyagi, some of the things we finally learn about Miyagi, we get to the bottom of. Like, we get a little bit of conclusion to Daniel's story. Obviously, we know that Daniel's story is not completely finished because of Cobra Kai Legends, or not Cobra Kai, Karate Kid Legends that's coming out later this year. So we get a little bit of a finality to Daniel's story there. We get a lot of LaRusso wrap up in this as well. But at the end of the day, Cobra Kai is Johnny Lawrence's story. This is Johnny Lawrence's thing. And I really think what they did a good job here is really bringing it back to it being about Johnny here. And you get this redemption for Johnny, because Johnny's had 40 years to really revel in this, like, I should have beaten Daniel in the original Karate Kid. And then you have the fallout with Kreese in the parking lot where he chokes Johnny out and puts his hands on him at the end of that. And you see now the fallout of what he had to endure with his life and kind of turned him into this, almost kind of heartless like person that he was at the beginning of Cobra Kai, and you see the breaking down of him layer by layer over the course of these 6 seasons, and you get this really beautiful full circle moment for Johnny in this, especially in these last 5 episodes, where, like I said, spoiler alerts, he becomes a father again with him and Carmen finally having the baby in this, and a very funny. Him trying to plan a proposal and a thing, and the way that works out is just part of the humor that Cobra Kai has, and the kind of the ridiculous shenanigans that come.
And the part of Johnny's life that nothing goes right for him.
Right, and you get some of that, and I still say that that's one of the 2 favorites of this entire series. Happened in 2 of my 2 favorite moments in the entire series have happened in these final 5 episodes.
Yeah, episode 3 was one of the biggest ones to me. That's where you got that heartfelt moment with that, and that was so.
That big. Episode 3 is my favorite episode of the entire series.
Or 13. So it's 3 of this block. Yeah. It's episode 13 overall.
13 of the season. You get, in my opinion, 2 of the coolest moments in the entire series. You get Kreese that's on this redemption run where he's trying to make amends with everybody. He goes and he tries to make amends with Tori, and he goes and tries to make amends with, everybody here. He tries to talk to Johnny outside of because they moved the Sekai Taikai to the Valley. That's where they're having it, the site of the original Karate Kid movie. So there's a lot of tie-ins and odes to the original stuff. And you see Kreese trying to pour his heart out to Johnny, and Johnny is basically telling him to go kick rocks. Like, I don't want to hear it from you, especially not now, especially after everything we've been through. And you see Johnny, like, after that, have this moment where he becomes a father, and spoiler, he marries Carmen right before she delivers the baby, and like they have this entire thing, and you see Johnny finally, lack of a better term, grow up a little bit, mature a little bit, and have that realization like, hey, I'm about to be a father. This is an opportunity for me to kind of right things in my life and get my life on the right track and do the things I want to do, because he's not happy doing just the working at the dealership for the Russos. He wants more. He wants to be able to provide for his family. And you get this really fun dynamic to where, you get this interplay between him and Daniel, where Daniel's trying to take the teachings of karate that Miyagi taught him to not have to fight. And Johnny's like, the yang to his yin is like, this is all I know. This is all I want to do, is to like be involved in karate. This is who I am. I want my own dojo. I want to teach kids. Like, this is what I was meant to do. And you get this really awesome moment with him and Kreese where, Kreese has tried, he's hung around, and you get this beautiful moment where Johnny just catches him in the hallway and just unloads 40 years of frustration on Kreese, and you see this beautiful moment where Kreese is like, finally, like, this is what I've always wanted. I've always held you, like, this is who I wanted you to be all along. I wanted you to be better than me. And, you get this beautiful moment where Kreese tries to like console him as he's like crying and pouring his heart out to Kreese, and he like pushes him off. Then he gets after him a little bit more, and then they finally embrace, and you just feel that beautiful healing moment that they have between the 2 of them. And it was just so well done. Like, it was
William
just like,
Zabka was so good in that
incredible scene from him in this. Like, probably his strongest scene in anything he's done. You just see him unload all this frustration, and they share this really warm and tender moment, which leads to, in my opinion, the coolest, like, 35 to 45 seconds of any episode that Cobra Kai ever does. So when you get to the Sekai Taikai tournament, and with Quan unfortunately dying in that brawl, Cobra Kai doesn't have a male challenger in the semifinals because, as you know, Quan was supposed to be one of the fighters in the end. So you have Robbie and Axel were supposed to be on the one side, and Quan was waiting to fight the winner. Well, they didn't have a person to step in, and you get this wonderful moment where, now all of a sudden Cobra Kai has this challenge, this new replacement that they name it, and in a full circle Cobra Kai moment, and just getting it back to the Cobra Kai that we all love, you get Miguel introduced as the Cobra Kai male competitor in this redemption moment for him. But they also said, led by their new sensei, former All Valley Chick, you see Johnny get Cobra Kai back from Kreese as part of like their way of making amends. And you see Johnny walking out in the blackie and the headband. It's just goosebumps all over, and one of the coolest moments I've ever seen. It was just like this full 180, like we're 360-degree moment. We're finally full circle. This is what Cobra Kai was meant to be, and you get a very Cobra Kai heavy, like, final couple episodes, and it was just so much fun. I was so happy they did this.
Yeah, and it did that so great of how they rebuilt everything too. It's like everything just flowed really well, and it did bring everything full circle and brought you to that. And talking about like episodes 11 and 12, a lot of it revolved around after Kwan's death. Daniel was really shooken up about it. He didn't want to have bonsais in the dealership anymore. He wanted to forget about Miyagi-Do. He didn't want to have anything to do with the Seikai Taikai coming back at all, because it took all of the sensei had to agree, but he was the one, well, what we thought was one of the ones. So there was another sensei who didn't want to come back, which was a little bit of surprise, and which helped lead into his arc of everything that went there. But I did want to touch one more time, because I know I started it and you talked about it again, that scene with Johnny and Kreese where he breaks down, because when you were talking about Johnny and what happened to him in the parking lot, that was the part that triggered me. And because he just screams emotion at him, like, you abandoned me, you left me alone, I loved you, like, you were a father to me, and this, and you just abandoned me, and you don't know what I went through after that. Like, he poured his heart and soul into that dialogue and everything. Like, that was a brilliant performance by him with that. Like, he poured his soul out from Johnny. Like, you just got so much of all the burdens, all the loser mentality, all the stuff that Johnny has been holding on his shoulders and his back and everything for so long was just poured out. And yet that was such a beautiful moment that I really enjoyed. And there was some really nice touches, because you got Tori and Sam decided to train together, and they're talking about significance. Like, Tori never wants to put on the gi again to be Cobra Kai, because of just every time she does, something bad happens to someone she loves or cares about. And her and Sam got some great moments of just talking about, like, even if you put that Cobra Kai gi on again, your friends are here. The people who care about you are here. And even got Tori pouring her heart out to the Russos and telling how much it was significant. She had such a opening up and finally dealing with her emotions, because she's been on her own and dealing with her mom's health, her mom's death, doing all that on her own. And she finally started opening up to everybody. You just got all these emotions from everybody is getting released and talked about, but it's done in such a smart and good way that, just all the characters got some love here. And there's some that was kind of thrown to the background, because there was those main core you need to go to. And so we did have, the tournament comes around and Robbie's fighting Axel, and we end up having an injury, which we kind of all saw coming in there, but it led to some great moments between him and Tori. And then you get Sam decides to drop out as well, which leaves us to Tori decides to come back, and it's her versus Zara, and she gets to go through all her emotions. And those were some good fights, because they were all working through some stuff, and you got to see Axel finally seeing just how horrible Sensei Wolf is, because we just see Wolf telling him it's because, Silver is behind Sensei Wolf and all that, and we learn that Silver is dying of cancer, and he feels like this tournament is the last thing he has. He has his fortune, but he's basically down to his yacht, and he doesn't care about anything else other than this tournament. He has to win. That's the only thing that's going to bring him significance before he dies, is winning this tournament. And he gets a guy in Sensei Wolf, which is played extremely well and stuff in there. But we get Axel finally starting to show a little bit more. All right, finally showing a backbone and standing up to that. And because we didn't really get Zara. Zara didn't really get a significant change. She just got her butt kicked. It's basically that what we got in the end. But it was just great. Like, there was so much to wrap up in these 5 episodes. They're like 39 to 49 minutes long each, but they wasted no time. It went through and made sure that it set up everything piece by piece perfectly as it needed to be. There was a little fun fluff, because it's one of my, and it's one I reached out to you, and I think it was episode 2. It's like, there's a fun cameo I didn't expect to see, because Daniel and Amanda were going to go out wine tasting and stuff and have a moment as adults, because there's no karate, there's no kids or anything else. We're going to go out, but Chosen is having such a hard time because he gets a letter from the woman he's been in love with that, oh, I love you as a friend. Well, he's just going to go binge Storage Wars because he's so so wrapped up. So they decided, all right, Chosen, we can't leave you alone. You come with us. And he gets set up on a mystery date with another 80s, 90s star that we haven't seen in a whole lot lately. And it was just so great to see her show up, because if you were a fan of Saved by the Bell, you knew that cameo right away.
Yeah, it was really fun, and there's some really fun interactions between the two of them. And then you kind of linger, like, okay, like, do we leave the thread with him and the other leader of the Cobra Kai dojo unpulled, but we get some fun wrapping up and some stuff with that as well to kind of wrap it up. And one thing I love is they really did give some really solid endings to everybody that's been involved in this show. You get some finality, you get some very strong finality for two main villains in this show as well. But I think Louis Tan did a great job as Sensei Wolf. Mm-hmm. He gets a little bit of his comeuppance as well. One thing you love about the Iron Dragons is all of the Iron Dragons are legitimate world champion taekwondo karate fighters, like have the legit credentials to kind of play this foil for, the Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do kids. Like Zara is legitimately who she plays in the show. Like the actress that plays her is legitimately a social influencer, multi-time world taekwondo champion, just this real life, legitimate, awesome fighter, like in real life. So as the guy who plays Axel is also a multi-time world champion in those things. So they play the perfect foils for these guys, but you get the wonderful moments for, Tori, for Robbie. Tori gets a little bit of love and redemption and a fine ending for, we go back and look at our archives and we talk about the other episodes where it's like, when is this poor girl going to catch a break? She finally catches a freaking break by the end of the show. And we're just like, I remember when that happened for her, and I'm like, thank God she got something good out of this. Like she gets the wonderful, like emotional, like you don't have to take on this all by yourself. You can lean on people. We're here for you. You're not alone. She got a really good, send off in that, and the way that her story ended.
She was really she was the Johnny of this story. So correct. I mean, you go back to the Karate Kid movies of what Johnny was going through and everything. You see him and the struggles he had. Tori was the female Johnny of the story, and seeing them both get a redemption and getting that arc and stuff was, it was really fantastic.
So good, man. You get follow-ups for pretty much everybody. The couple they kind of address them more in part 2 than they did in part 3. You don't get as much with like Kenny or Devin in this as I would have liked to have seen at the end of this, but I think they did okay wrapping them up, and you see you do get to see what ultimately happens to them at the very end of the show, and where they're going forward as like potentially the new star students of Cobra Kai, like the next lead non-graduated, members of the dojo. They're like the next kind of Miguel and Tori kind of like, and that's really cool to see from them. But literally everyone else gets like a story wrapped up for them in a pretty cool way. You get some resolution with Dimitri and Hawk, who at the end of this were going to separate colleges, and you get some resolution on that to have that all work out for them as well. You get some fun wrap-ups for Miguel, for, Samantha, who...
And Miguel and Sam do have, like, it's a good ending, but it's also a mixed ending, because you don't know exactly what's going to happen between them, because they're going their separate ways, but they're still kind of together, and they're going together, so they're the only ones that really had something that was kind of still... Will they, won't they, kind of where is their future going? Which it could be a spinoff that they do that follows them in the future.
It could be, but I kind of feel like they did get a little bit of a definitive ending. Like Sam gets the spoiler alert of how they ended. I'll spoil this little bit of it, but Sam gets to go off and take this journey to Japan that she's always wanted to take, and gets involved in a year-long internship, whereas, Miguel gets into Stanford. He gets into the college he wants to go to, so they're going to go their separate ways, but it winds up like, hey, he's not going to Stanford right away, so he goes to Japan with her. So it's like, we know we're going to go our separate ways, but we can hold off a little bit longer. I want to go on this last journey with you. So they kind of set off to go do their own thing, and it's kind of like a fitting ending for the two of them, I think, because you get Miguel's full circle moment when he comes back to Cobra Kai and gets to compete in the Sekai Taikai, and you get a really awesome karate fight scenes that really wrap up the show in a really fun, really well done way. And it's just, they did such a good job of this series of landing the plane on everything here. All the endings, in my opinion, were satisfactory for all of the main characters in this, and it's just an incredible way to end this show after 6 incredible seasons that I wasn't even sure they would ever get to 6 seasons.
Yeah. Netflix doesn't normally give shows that long of a run.
They really don't. And some of these other shows that they have that are ending aren't getting 6 seasons and getting it's technically the 4th Netflix season, but still, like, you get a show that goes on that long and you get such a satisfactory ending that I'm so glad that it got. And it just did. Kudos to the people that write the show that were a big part of putting it together. And I cannot recommend a show like this enough. Like I said, it wound up becoming one of my most favorite like series I've watched in a long time because it's so well done. It's a completely and it's such a ridiculous premise. All of the world, we jokingly say all the world's problems can be solved by karate, but it's kind of the heart and soul of it. It's a karate show that's not really a karate show. You know what I mean? That it's karate adjacent, but it tells so many of these stories in such a fun, cheesy, over the top way it works. It's smart. These people know. These people that wrote this show know what they're doing, and I just cannot say enough good things about this show.
Yeah, before we wrap it up, I did want to talk about one of my favorite scenes as the show wrapped up. Is, as you mentioned, Cobra Kai gets to come back, and at first it's Tori, and then we get Tori and Miguel, and we get Johnny back, but at the very end, we get everybody, all the kids, even Daniel and Chosen are all in the Cobra Kai gis. Daniel has his headband on, and Daniel kind of becomes a sensei. Like, we got a great Rocky montage training that Johnny finally asked Daniel to train him to get him ready to fight Sensei Wolf and stuff, and we get that 80s montage, that Rocky montage for the training and stuff. So but good. Daniel is he gets a lot of revelations about how Mr. Miyagi looked at things, and he's trying to help Johnny in that way. And then it's fun, like, Johnny, what gets through to him. And he gives such the biggest Cobra Kai speech to Johnny that was just hysterical. So good. But it just kind of completed that journey that they went on of being feuding and against each other and separate and still fighting throughout the series here. And that kind of finally bridged that bond. Like, all right, we're not so different than that we've seen. But that was just such a fantastic speech that he gave to Johnny in that moment.
Such a great Cobra Kai. And that's what I mean. Like, the show's been about Cobra Kai at its core to the beginning. And like, it was such a cool moment, such a surreal moment to see. Just a little funny side piece is when he comes walking out in the Cobra Kai gi, all in black, and it's just so funny. Like, it's already unnerving to see Danny LaRusso in Cobra Kai colors, but just they do the immediate cut to his wife. He's like, he looks kind of good in a black gi.
I like the black.
I don't know why that got me, and I was just cackling at that point. But
a little bit of a dangerous,
a dangerous side to Daniel. Like, his wife was all on board with it, but it was so funny. But yeah, like the very Cobra, like he's trying to still get through to him like Miyagi would, and Chosen in all of his brilliance was like, it's not working. You know how to push Johnny's buttons. You know how to get him into that mindset that he needs to be. And he gives him, like you said, the most speech. Johnny Lawrence Cobra Kai speech to get it to click in his head that he can do it. And it works. And it's so brilliant. It's so funny. He uses language that you don't really hear him use the entire series. It's just, that scene alone is just chef's kiss. It's so good.
Did you think, like I did, that you were waiting for Johnny to do the crane kick?
110%.
I 100% thought that's how it was going to end. I thought he was going to do the crane kick.
Get the kick, but I love that instead of doing that, he does a little bit earlier, he does that tornado kick that he was trying to teach the kids in the 4th season. A little bit of a callback. There's so much. What I love in that fight with Wolf is they see the culmination of all of the training and all of the things that he's done throughout the entire run of Cobra Kai. You get these, like, as they're moving, as they're, like, in their fight, you see how he's moving it flashes back in such a love letter to the entire show at this point, because you see the training montages with Miguel and the bond that he and Miguel have, and you see all these other things that tie into other moments of the show and these movements that he's doing and how they all connected. It was really brilliantly shot in that final fight with Wolf. That it was a really cool way to wrap things up. But I really did think he was going to try, because they even have him as they were practicing.
They were standing
on the
for
thing,
it.
like they were gonna, like, you even have Daniel doing the training that Miyagi did with him with Johnny. Have the practice holding up and setting up for the crane kick, and you get Johnny doing all that stuff too. Just so good, so well done.
Yeah, the only probably small little bitty negative I could say, because I said this nailed the landing so well, is that there was one final scene with Mr. Miyagi that they brought in an actor and then they, deep faked over his face to have Mr. Miyagi in there. And like, I get the significance. It was a good scene overall, but the way the deep fake was done, like, I don't think he ever blinked.
Yeah, the dream
and
sequence.
the mouth didn't move very well, that dream sequence and stuff. So that was the only negative I could say. Like, the scene was it was significant and it was good, but just the kind of poor execution of the deep fake to bring Mr. Miyagi's face back was a little, it took me out slightly, but I was having so much fun with this entire, and like I said, it just had so much depth and emotion, throwbacks. Like it did bring all aspects other than the next Karate Kid. That was never, we didn't get a Hilary Swank, cameo or anything that popped up and bringing that into the world. It was, Daniel's Karate Kid stuff and bringing all that. And we kind of talked about leading up into this final part was it going to have any significance to the film? Is it going to tie into the film in any way? And the answer in the end was no. Like, there really is no significance to how this series ends to where the Karate Kid Legends movie is going to pick up, which is kind of good in the end. It allowed it to end on its own. Yeah. Own way that it wanted to do. And we did get such a great journey with Johnny. Like, we got Johnny still being Johnny not knowing how to kind of be a good person, to how to, like, we kind of get, as some people think, and I love that they touched on that some people think that Daniel was the villain of the Karate Kid movies and Johnny was the good guy and all that. And we kind of got depth and layers to that, and we got to see Johnny go through such a significant journey and still get beat down and have problems. And when he finally gets his moment and his redemption and his life together with Carmen and the house and the boys and the tournament and Cobra Kai, it was just, you could almost see in William himself and that kind of wash all of his troubles and all of the weight that he was holding and everything throughout the years. You see, okay, he can breathe now. Like, his life is finally starting to be a life.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was so good. And another thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap it up is the music in this has always been really good, but especially in these last 5 episodes, the music was so on point for everything that they did in this. And everything enhanced the scenes that it was used for. The music was so good. It's
some great 80s music.
I love the use of the 80s music in this because it's based off of, obviously the popular 80s films, but like they do such a good job of incorporating the music into this show that it was just so good, man. Yeah. It was so well done. I'm so happy that it ended the way that it did.
And it ended in such, kind of going to the final scene, because there's a little Easter egg that I want to talk about. Yeah, this is going to be spoiler to the last moments, but Johnny and Daniel decide to meet up at a restaurant and talk and stuff. And the first part you get is actually the producers of the show sitting at the cafe table talking about a movie production that they want to do. And that movie they're talking about is an alternate reality Back to the Future with Billy Zane and everything else. Like, they're just going full bore. I think we can get them aboard on it because, of course, that was a significant part of the 80s and 90s and stuff there as well. That was big, along with the Karate Kid, but getting them talking about that alternate reality had me cracking up. And you get Daniel with the fly. And I don't want to give away exactly the end, but you get a throwback to the chopsticks and the fly. And that was such a... It was such a fitting way for the show to end in such a humorous and funny and touching way that it ended. But we got a great dialogue between Daniel and Johnny there about just kind of how things will continue, that we get that, we've got more tournaments coming up, but how about we do this? So, Cobra Kai is going to train the offensive and Miyagi-Do is going to train the defense. And for these tournaments, we'll swap. You'll take one of my fighters who maybe needs to work on their defense, be more defensively, and you give me one of yours who needs to be a little more significant on offense, and that they're going to work together, that we finally got this bond and the right way of Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai joining forces, even though, Cobra Kai is kind of the more significant dojo that's remaining. Miyagi-Do is still kind of there in the background, kind of as it should be, as Mr. Miyagi was. He wasn't running a full dojo. He was just running to help Daniel and everything, and it just ended, like, it just wrapped everything up in such a beautiful, smart, touching, entertaining, fun way. Like most of it was predictable that you saw, but it was the predictable that you wanted. You wanted to see that happen. Like we finally needed Tori to have her moment. We finally needed Johnny to have his moment. We needed all these characters that weren't getting breaks to get their breaks, especially Robbie and just all of them getting a well-deserved break with everything. And it just ended beautiful. Like I said at the beginning, like this just is one of the prime examples that I'll have of sticking the landing. Like it just nailed, these 5 episodes just nailed every single thing they needed to do in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. And now that we've gotten to the end of this season and the end of this series, I think we can finally give, our rating on this entire season now. So how we feel about the season in totality, because it wasn't without some of its issues a little bit in the first season, but I think with the way they stick the landing. So I kind of want to just wrap it up there that, like, at the end of the day, Cobra Kai is this telling of the redemption story arc for Johnny Lawrence. And I think season 6 finally gets a way to, especially towards the end, give us that redemption for Johnny in a way that feels very at the heart of what Cobra Kai had originally set out to do, is telling the story of Johnny and the way that his life turned out following the events of Karate Kid. And they do a really great job of sticking the landing here. It's got heart. It's got incredible fight scenes. It's funny. It's got depth. It's got, everything you would want in a really well-told story all wrapped into one. And for that reason, honestly, this last season, especially with the incredible way that they stuck the ending, I'm going to give season 6 a 9.5 out of 10. It's not completely perfect. The ending in the last 5 episodes is absolute perfection, in my opinion. Like the best way you could wrap up a series that has gone on for as long as it has now. And for that reason, I want to give it a 9.5 out of 10 overall, because the ending was just absolutely remarkable and everything I wanted in a way to wrap up this story.
Yeah, season 6 of Cobra Kai, I would give season 6 a 9. Like these final 5 took it from being like a 7.5 to an 8 to a significant 9. Like the last 5 I would give the last 5 a perfect 10. The season overall a 9, because those last 5 just did everything right. I talked, and you can look at our review of the other 2 parts, that it had some corniness with how they handled the kids and just didn't kind of just went to the standard of all their teenagers are going to go get drunk. They're going to do this. They're going to run around. They're not going to really talk. They're going to just kind of the standard fluff stuff that it could have been done a little bit better, because we had been on such a journey with these kids. We would think at this time of with them going to the Saikai Taikai would have been a different way that some of the stuff would have went down, but it did set up a fantastic ending. It stuck the landing in every way. But yeah, the final season here, I would give a 9. That, like I said, that final 5 just sent it over the top, being great. I would give the series as a whole probably an 8. Like I said, it did start off a little slow. It did have some rough patches and some things it didn't do right, but it really did fall into its own in these last few seasons and ended on such a high note.
Yeah, overall, I'd give the series about an 8.5 to a 9 myself. It's been so fun to go on this journey. It's a show that never takes itself too seriously, but at the same time, it gives you enough of that heart and depth to character that you really want to see to kind of balance out some of the silliness and the over the topness and the way that they attack real world problems. Jokingly say, it's very meta in the sense that they know that karate is being used to solve the world's problems here, kind of thing. And they know that it's that on that basis alone, it's silly, but they tell it in such a good way that it's charming and endearing. And I have so much love for the show. It's become one of my favorite series of all time. It really has. I plan on going and just doing an absolute blast out binge watch of this show again multiple times. It's going to be one that I have a lot of high rewatchability for, and it's going to make my way into a rotation of shows that I watch again to kind of get that appreciation for. It's not I've seen it already, I don't need to come back to it. I plan on revisiting this show.
Hey, it seems like one that could be really fun to revisit. And also even like, because of how they did the final season, it was split up into 3 different chunks. It's going to be really interesting to go back and just watch the entire series as a whole without those breaks and stuff, and just see how it flows together, because the breaks were helpful too, because it was split up perfectly in the significant chunks that it needed to be. But I do really want to see how the whole season flows together without those 4 or 5 months in between each part there. But yeah, it was a really well done season. I'm sad to see the series end, but it's also glad that it ended in such a great way without overstaying. Because when we got around season 3 to 4, you're like, well, how much more do they really have to tell? Like, it wasn't that it was getting bad, but it was like, did they have a whole lot to tell? And then they did a solid season 5, and they're like, all right, they have to get to a point where they end this, and they just ended it in the correct, right, perfect way. And bravo to everyone involved, because that especially, again, these final 5 were just spectacular episodes. This is how you finish off a series. This is how you end a season in such a significant, heartfelt, emotional way for the new viewers, for the old viewers who've been with the Karate Kid since we were kids. It was just done so well.
Fantastic job all around everybody that worked on this. I'm excited to see the career paths of the younger actors that have been on the show. Some of the things they're definitely going to start to break out doing. I know the actress Peyton List that plays Tori has gone on to do some really cool roles that she's taken on after this. Obviously, the actor that plays Miguel was Blue Beetle, moved into the superhero role a little bit. And, just to see the wonderful things that these kids are all going to move on and do as they move forward in their acting careers, I'm super excited for that as well. But you can catch every single episode of Cobra Kai on Netflix right now. 6th season, final season is wrapped up. Come to our social media post, come to our YouTube video, leave a comment on what you thought of Cobra Kai. Tell us what your favorite moments of the series, maybe something you didn't like. Come let us know what you thought in those comments, in our social media posts, and on YouTube. We can't wait to talk about this with you.
Yeah, so I want to head over into our what's coming up this week. So we kind of have a little bit slower week, but there is a big horror film coming out. We have The Monkey. So this is based on Stephen King's short story. That it's kind of funny too that we'll probably get into it with our review of the film, is that some things with the Monkey film here had to be changed because of Disney and Toy Story. So if you want to know that full story, stay tuned for our next episode where we will review The Monkey in our next episode. I'm already giving that away here, but that's going to be really interesting to talk about, that Disney had a part in making some changes in the Stephen King adaptation here. But we also have a couple smaller movies that we haven't really heard a lot about, but on paper they look like they might be fun. So we have The Old Guy, which is Christoph Waltz and Lucy Liu in an action comedy. I ended up looking up the trailer after seeing it was coming out this week. It looks like it could be fun, but there's been no press, nothing about it. Like, it's just kind of being tossed out there. Of course, it's week 2 of Captain America Brave New World, so maybe they're not expecting it to, or wanting it to do. It might just be one of those, we're just dumping these movies off because we don't have a whole lot of confidence in them doing something. You don't really know, because there's just kind of several movies coming out that we haven't got anything on.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a shame, because it does have 2 very talented actors at the top leading this film. But I'm excited to check that one out. The trailer does look intriguing, and I'll definitely make time to watch that one for sure.
And then we also have The Cleaner, which is Daisy Ridley and Clive Owen. It's an action thriller where she's kind of playing a spy. The trailer looks decent and interesting and stuff, but again, just like Old Guy, it's another one that we haven't seen anything on, so it's just kind of coming out without any fanfare. And the last one, I have seen a little bit more on this one. So this is a Zachary Levi family drama film, The Unbreakable Boy. It looks like it could be interesting, but it's also kind of, he's done a few of these now. With Wonder, we've had a few of these, like with Wonder. They kind of all fit in that same family drama type of things, dealing with an autistic son and stuff is there. It looks like it could be interesting, but it's another one that just feels like it's being tossed out into the world right around here with Captain America, that we probably figure either Paddington, Captain America, or The Monkey's going to have the bigger box office weekend coming up.
For sure, and you'll get a lot of those movies that kind of are a little less heralded that could wind up being some hidden gems, and you never know. These could be a couple of prime examples from that. Could be looking 6 months from now and be going like, why wasn't nobody talking about this movie when it came out?
Yeah. Over on demand, we have quite a lot of films coming out this week for you to rent or buy. So we'll start off with The Brutalist. This is the Adrian Brody historical drama that has gotten a lot of fanfare at the awards. It was made for a very small budget. It's a historical kind of war film set after World War II, I believe. It looked really good. We didn't get a chance to check it out, but it looks like it's going to be really good. We're finally going to get to see that on demand here.
Yeah, it's nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. It's got a lot of Oscar buzz. Some people's opinion, it could be the front runner to win it right now. We'll see. We got the Oscars coming up here in a few weeks as well, but we'll see how it does. But good to get it out on demand and check it out.
We also got the horror comedy Companion, which you can go back in our archives and see what we thought about that film. We have The Last Showgirl, which is another one that's had a lot of award buzz for Pamela Anderson and Jamie Lee Curtis. It sounds like it's a really solid film to check out. Again, it's one that I don't even think we had airing anywhere around us here to be able to check out, even if we wanted to. So we finally get a chance to see that one. And then probably the oddest film that was announced last year was Love Me, which was Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun as a satellite and a buoy fall in love after the world has basically ended. Very odd premise of the film, but I'm looking forward to try to check it out, and maybe more when it hits streaming that I check that one out. But I want to see, I at times do find good enjoyment out of those quirky movies. At times I do enjoy those quirky movies, but I want to see just how quirky, because the premise alone is like, okay, how is that? Is it, I mean, you got two good stars, but how is that going to really work out?
Yeah, you never know. It's definitely one that I want to check out for sure, and probably wait till it gets on streaming for that one.
And then lastly, we have Mufasa the Lion King. So we have the live action CGI animated sequel to the live action animated Lion King sequel. All of these will drop on February 18th on demand, so you have your pick of what you want to see. Between love stories, an animated family film, between a historical drama, horror, everything. You've got your pick. Over on the TV side, I did binge watch the first 2 seasons of Reacher, so I'm ready for Reacher Season 3. That will hit Prime Video on February 20th. But there's another interesting show that's going to be coming out on Netflix on the same day, is Zero Day. And it's significant because it's a series with Robert De Niro in it coming out on Netflix. It's a political conspiracy thriller, but it's getting some good buzz around it as well.
Yeah, I got a lot of people talking about it. Getting a big deal to get an actor of the caliber of Robert De Niro to show up in a Netflix series. That's a big one, definitely one worth checking out. I'm stoked for Reacher Season 3. Alan Ritchson does such a great job on that show.
Such a monster of a man.
He's a large man, and it's very meta about how big he is in the show.
I love all those jokes.
They love taking, some fun shots at him in a playful way about just the large, massive, strong man that he is. But it's a ton of fun. If you've never watched those, definitely recommend checking them out. I'm glad you finally binged it before this new season comes out and you're on board with it. So I'm excited for that.
And they've hyped up this season that they've got, and they've released a clip of it if you want to watch it before the season comes out or not, of a guy who is significantly bigger than he is, but it's still hard to make Alan Ritchson look like a small guy. He still looks significantly huge, even though this guy has 6 inches on him and has a big muscle mass to him as well. It's going to be really interesting to see that dynamic between 2 giants playing off of each other like that. That's going to be a lot of fun. We also have the Screen Actors Guild Awards on Netflix on February 23rd. And also on February 23rd, we have the premiere of Suits LA with Stephen Amell on NBC. So that's going to be interesting to see how that spinoff works. The Suits was a good hit for them and everything. So see how the Suits LA spinoff ends up working for them.
You don't want to be in a huge hit like when it got onto streaming. I know like that was one of the shows that when the pandemic came through and it was like a big deal on Netflix to like that was a big deal for them for a while. It was very, very popular on streaming, like even more so than it was on like TV when it aired. Like when it got to streaming, it just blew up and people fell in love with this. So this is the first spinoff of Stephen Amell, like you mentioned. I'm excited to check that one out and see how it maybe compares or differs from the original for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, but it's a pretty loaded week. We've got a lot coming on TV, most of it on streaming, but we have a lot on demand, and I'm really looking forward to checking out The Monkey and just seeing. We've heard a lot about it because it's by Osgood Perkins, who did Long Legs, so there's a little bit of hype coming in from there because that movie had so much hype after it came out and everything. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he takes on a Stephen King tale and does have the trailers have looked fun and interesting, but I know from the description of it, it's very bloody, very gory. So there's very little that they've been able to show us in the trailers, which is a good thing that we have some surprises coming in that film.
Yeah, I'm excited for something over the top like that for sure. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. We can't thank you enough for your continued support. Coming up next week, like Brad said, we are going to be reviewing the film The Monkey, and we're also going to be going back and reviewing the final 5 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. We took a week off to do Cobra Kai because we love Cobra Kai so much, but by the time this next episode comes around, the final 5 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man will be out. We're excited to talk about them as well. Until then, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.